everyone. I am very excited to introduce our next speaker in session. We have Paulo Silva joining us. He's the head of strategy and sales at Sutherland Global. And today we are going to be discussing outcome-based CX and how leaders can turn every interaction into measurable impact, which is so exciting. And we are so happy to have you join us here, Paulo. Welcome.
Thank you, Brooke. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to have this conversation.
Me too. So, for our audience, would you mind just sharing a little bit about your background and your current role at Sutherland Global?
Sure. So I'm 34 years in the industry, long time, and with Sutherland, I'm honored to lead the charge with their strategy and sales around new logo acquisition, focused on multiple verticals. I spend most of my time with C-suites who are really trying to navigate two pressures at once: increased customer satisfaction and obviously the increased cost constraints that are being experienced. So we really help them rethink how work gets done and redesign their journey mapping to fuse both AI and human empathy into one.
That's great. And honestly, what so many people who are joining us today are thinking about. So, very excited to have you share more of your perspective and how you're achieving that, which is really
Thank you.
exciting. So this session that we're speaking on today is focused on outcome-based CX. And we're going to dive into what that means, but I wanted to start with where we're at right now. So where are organizations going wrong when it comes to the customer experience today, and why do we need to shift to this outcome-based strategy?
That's a great question and a really good point to kind of start this conversation. I think when you take a step back and you assess what's going on with organizations, the biggest miss today is that CX is still very much being managed like an operational cost center. Companies are just being flooded with dashboards and all of the KPI metrics that you can imagine, right? Most interactions are still very transactional and generic in nature, and so there's a little bit of blind spots that are occurring with this new evolving transformational trends. Because of that, they're failing to build loyalty that eventually hurts their top line growth opportunity. So what outcome-based CX forces is a shift from activity to impact. Okay. Instead of optimizing for speed or case volume, we really optimize for business outcomes that matter. Things such as like retention and conversion and lifetime value, and more importantly, brand trust. One of the things that COVID created was this new understanding that there's so many options out there. There's so many angles to look at things where, loyalty does become a leading factor in creating that stickiness with your members or your customers. So what we always encourage is that leaders need to shift because efficiency alone is not going to win. Loyalty is becoming the new growth engine, and loyalty is built through experiences that are designed with measurable intent.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And it's interesting because we're investing so much time and money into experiences. And yet, from on the CCW digital side, we have research that says pretty much every year customers say that experiences are getting worse. This year, I think the number was 55% of customers said that experiences are getting worse. And so, if we're not focused on the right outcomes, then we're not going to see the results that customers want. And then we're just really wasting our time and energy. So, such an important piece. And so I want to dig a little bit deeper into this conversation because you mentioned that CX is becoming this measurable driver of business growth. So can you talk a little bit more about that and how we can actually, achieve that?
Sure, sure. The days of CS being a soft capability is really over. When you activate customer intelligence and behavioral insight correctly, every interaction becomes a commercial moment, as we like to call it, right? Every interaction needs to count. We're seeing clients quantify the impact of this statement in really three major areas that has caused us to pivot and rethink how we support our clients and obviously their most trusted assets, which is their members. So revenue lift through better targeting, right? Smarter upsell signals and emotionally aware conversations. This is all assisted with AI. So you've got a human that's leading the charge on the interaction, but you have AI that's empowering that interaction to take fold in a very natural manner. Retention is another topic. By reducing failure points and proactively resolving issues before customer defects is a massive, massive thing. With the amount of intel that customers are providing and companies are ingesting, there's no reason why organizations shouldn't invest in proactive measures to retain their customers. You've got all the data, you know where all the hurdles and pitfalls occur. Being able to get ahead of it is really key. And then I would say probably the third one is cost efficiency that scales, not by cutting individuals, but by enabling AI to really handle what's best and freeing humans to influence those moments that actually drive value. I share often with our clients the most important thing is to take out the commoditized interactions because those can be handled via automation, and the higher touch, higher complex interactions, leave those to individuals that are properly trained and equipped to be able to handle them to resolution. So when you tie these things together, CX becomes one of the most reliable levers for profitable growth. But it starts with the understanding that it needs to be leading versus it's a reactive practice.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, I think that the proactive piece is so important. And, our series is focused on humanity or technology versus humanity. And I like how you talk a lot about how humans will be interplaying with technology and what that will look like, because that is something that I think a lot of leaders struggle with. So if we're able to be proactive and really start reimagining what and how we want the experience to look like for both our customer and agents, that's a great place to start.
Absolutely. Totally agree with that.
So let's dive a little bit deeper into outcome-based CX. So at a high level, how would you describe outcome-based CX and why is it so important for leaders to, strive for this right now?
So, outcome-based CX to us means designing every interaction, whether it's AI-led or human-led, it's got to be a deliberate business outcome in mind at the core of what you're trying to get to. The spray and pray tactics, those have by and large gone away. Now you're into a more laser-focused, methodical approach. So, um, the way we look at it is, did the interaction reduce churn as an example? Did it deepen loyalty? Did it create lifetime value, right? You look at every single interaction and you ask that question of, was there a salient business outcome that we can grasp from this and more importantly, put it at scale? The traditional CX models, they optimize for efficiency or satisfaction, but not impact. And right now, when you talk to customers, and there's been tons of studies that have been done out there, it's all about how did that company make me feel? How did that company make me want to do more or less with them because of that interaction? So outcome-based CX creates a shared truth for all of the constituents within an organization. Marketing can take that information and create, other campaigns. When you look at operations, they can up level their delivery practices. Obviously, the finance arm, our CFOs are going to be looking for, can we do this in a much more efficient manner, reduce leakage, right? And then obviously, chief client officers, when we talk to them, they're all about stickiness. So how can we build that experience and that outcome for them? So it really should pay for itself when you organize people, data, and AI around outcomes, not tasks. And the way I really simplify it for our leadership team is you got to shift from maintaining journeys to engineering growth, right? Every interaction should have a direct correlation to how do we grow from this as a company and as a market share perspective.
Yeah, I mean, every interaction really counts. Like for the customer, it's not just a one-off transaction. Like it means something to them. And when it's done really well, like you said, I mean, loyalty occurs and there's so much greater impact when you actually focus on every interaction and building that growth, like you said, instead of just focusing on maintaining.
Exactly.
So I want to ask you about how organizations can actually achieve this because it sounds great. But how can companies actually lead with outcome-based CX? What tools or technology or really strategy must be in place for them to achieve this?
That's a great question. We just had an analyst session where this came up as well, and we realized there's really three essentials that matter. And if organizations could just rally around these three and then personalize it based on their culture, their mission statements, and their journey mapping, I think they're going to have tremendous success. Everything should start with customer intelligence as the foundation, right? Organizations need a unified 360 view of sentiment, behavior, intent, root cause signals. Without this, you're still in that guessing game, right? We think this is going on. We think we heard this. The thinking game, those days are long gone. There's so much intel out there that you can leverage to have it become factual and data driven. So that's number one. The second one I would say is it's got to be a human-led, AI-empowered orchestration, right? And at the core of who we are, that's how we approach any type of partnership or arrangement is, okay, AI we know is going to handle the volume, the pattern detections, the real-time cues, but really the individuals or the humans handle nuances, trust, relationships, right? So you got to combine those two in order to create a measurable influence in the moments that matter. You're not going to be successful optimally with one or the other, but together it's going to create a pretty memorable experience, which is, what organizations are going for. And I would say the third one is design intelligence. When you think about the opportunity to go into a lab as an example. If you have your own innovation lab or if you partner with an organization, we at Sutherland have Sutherland Labs. We thrive in that environment because what we're doing is we're turning insights into journeys and interactions engineered for specific outcomes. The running joke is we get to tinker. We'll say, "Hey, Brooke, what are you most after? What's your nirvana look like?" And then we go in and we start tinkering to see, can we get there, right? And if so, great. If not, how close can we get there? And what are some of the moments of truth that we've identified? So, when you combine these elements into one and they're all in place, if you will, outcome-based CX becomes not just a possible thing, but a scalable thing, right? And I think that's where a lot of organizations at this point in time in their journey are trying to figure it out, right? We know it's possible. I mean, there's enough examples out there to validate that it can be done, but at what scale? And, orgs that are disciplined in their approach, they're going to get there sooner rather than later.
Thanks for sharing. I think it can be daunting to think about, entering into this journey, but as you broke it down, I think it's really helpful to get like the key tenets of what this looks like and how we can achieve it. Um, but I want to talk a little bit more about getting started because that can be sometimes the hardest part for people. So, how can leaders really prepare for this journey, and what would you say is the most important first step?
So I have this statement that I've been using for several years now, having been a part of this whole AI movement. Think bold, start small. Think bold, start small. The first step is alignment. I think any organization that really wants to get religion around this and get serious about it, they've got to understand, what outcomes matter most to their business, matter most to their organization as a whole. And it's not, just to be clear, it's not, let me go identify 20 KPIs to go and track, but it's more of just a handful of outcomes tied to growth, loyalty, and profitability, right? It's that 80/20 rule that you need to embrace. Once that's defined, then the next key element is to map your customer journeys backwards from those outcomes. So you have to start with the end in mind. That's what we call nirvana, and then deconstruct it so that you have clarity around, okay, we know this is, where we want to get to, but what's the journey? What's that bridge look like? What will happen is you're going to quickly identify those moments or incidents where you're losing customers, you're missing upsell signals, or you're creating, unnecessary friction that you can immediately avoid. I mean, to me, those are what I call low-hanging fruits, right? Things that could have a material impact on your customer's sentiment, which then has a correlation into loyalty. Then after that, you want to activate a proof of value sprint, right? So get everybody on the same page. One journey, one outcome, one measurable win. It could be something as simple as we want to reduce this, or we want to gain market share by Y. But if you get everyone marching in that direction, you're going to get there sooner rather than later versus, again, trying to boil the ocean with 20 KPIs or so. So leaders who start here and create momentum fast and avoid that kind of boiling the ocean trap, they will have a profound impact on their organization's ultimate objective. And that's where I think if everyone just started at that point, you're going to get there sooner rather than later.
So I want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit more about how Sutherland fits into this. So can you talk a little bit more about how Sutherland is really helping brands turn these interactions into measurable impact?
Yes, thank you for that opportunity. I appreciate it. Um, you know, we at Sutherland, we pride ourselves on this mantra that we've been on for a few years now of, human-led, AI-empowered model that links every interaction to a measurable business result. That is our goal, is to be able to sit in front of our clients and tangibly walk them through here's what our efforts are rendering, and here's what that means to you as an organization, and here's what that means to your clients as your most valuable asset, if you will. Our differentiator is the combination of really a couple things. Number one is our labs for journey redesign and behavioral science. We pride ourselves on having the ability to run every partnership through our labs protocol. We essentially deconstruct, or i.e. break their interactions. What we're really trying to do in that vein is figure out where can we improve, where can we refine, where can we eliminate duplication, where are there gaps that we need to address. So it starts with a deconstruction of the interaction, and then it builds into this journey mapping that we hopefully start having a baseline with. Once that's done, our unified desktop and AI stack becomes very, very important because it's monumental that our individuals that are supporting your customers are equipped with all of the technology and processes to help them have an optimal experience, and more importantly, to allow for that optimal customer sentiment at the end of that interaction. So we spend a ton of time understanding all of the nuances that goes into handling customers' inquiry, whether that's voice calls, emails, chats, back office, you name it, to then come back with a single pane of glass that allows that agent to do the best of their abilities because they're more focused on the empathy card, the logic card, versus them trying to figure out where's the data or the canned script that I need to use. All of that should be surrounding them in a very proactive manner. And then really the last piece is the deep domain expertise in the verticals where lifetime value is critical. We have a pretty good advantage point, having serviced hundreds of clients across so many facets of scope type and business type and support type. We're able to bring that forward from a best practice perspective, to allow you to see how others are doing it. If there's a hurdle that needs to be overcome, has someone else experienced that hurdle? And if so, what were some of the solutions that were brought forth that rendered the resolutions that they were looking for? So all of that, Brooke, to say we don't just design better experiences, we actually engineer experiences that drive revenue, that reduce churn, and strengthen that emotional connection with your customers. That's what gets us excited and gets us going, and we pride ourselves to bring that to every single partnership and relationship that we have, and we're really proud of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's so great to hear. And really, everyone who is attending is looking for that. I think building stronger connections with your customers, really focusing on outcomes and achieving them, not just kind of buying into hype and trying to iterate and improve. It's really focused on goals and goal setting. And yeah, it sounds like you guys have a really strong connection with all of your clients, which is so exciting.
Thank you. We do.
So, as we end off here, any final thoughts or key takeaways that you want to leave us here with today?
There is. I've done several speaking engagements in the last few months, and I will tell you the one thing that I'm convinced at this point in the journey is, CX is entering a new era. It's unmistakable. We're in a new chapter. Efficiency matters, and that's really going to be the core of what keeps this trend going. It's no longer enough to just be okay with, hey, we improved a process. The brands that are going to win in the years to come will be those that treat every single interaction as a chance to influence a customer's decision and measure it accordingly, right? And know when to do that. That it's one thing to just do kind of that spray and pray. It's another thing to do a hyper personalized approach where you're creating that stickiness, you're creating that loyalty. Outcome-based CX, in my opinion, is the fastest and most sustainable path to customer loyalty and profitable growth. When you think about those two elements, that is at the core of every single organization. You want your customers to be loyal to you, and you want the ability to be profitable while doing so. And so, human-led, AI empowered, in my opinion, in our opinion as Sutherland, is how you get there. And we look forward to working with many more organizations on their journey to get there as well.
Well, thank you so much, Paulo. I just so enjoyed listening to you, talk about this because it is such an important topic. And I think we're at a time of a lot of change. And so focusing on the right things, having the right strategy in place is so important. So thank you for sharing all of your insights today.
Thank you for having me, Brooke, and I appreciate this time.